For centuries, Alderaan stood as a beacon of hope in the Republic. But the Empire came.
I have chosen to test this station's destructive power on your home planet of Alderaan.
Peace while you suffer. The Emperor drowns you in black waters.
He wants me to be Darth Revan again. Serve him as I did centuries ago. He made me a Sith Lord and named me Darth Revan.
The Force does not control you. You saved Ugantia using something you thought was important. But your motives are still aligned with the Jedi Code.
To arms, men! Defend the throne!
Anakin Skywalker was weak. I destroyed him.
He was weak and foolish, like his father. So I destroyed him.
Lost to Windu, you have fought gallantly. Worthy of recognition in the archives of the Jedi. It is finished.
To them it is.
I have been waiting for you. Is it true that he is the chosen one?
It's Alex,
And Ellena.
and welcome back to State of the Galaxy. We're going to cover two things today, because bizarrely you've been on 3 or 4 episodes, but you haven't yet done the Star Wars questionnaire.
Yeah.
So that's lacking on my part.
Like, come on.
But something that we're going to cover first is, because we've covered my favourite quote from Star Wars Episode 2 on a few occasions and stuff like that. But you could argue that that's depicting a ideal way of living, embracing your emotion. But there are 3 codes that exist within the Star Wars universe anyway, and they're of course the Jedi, the Sith, and the Grey Jedi codes. So the first one we're going to cover is the Jedi Code, and the Jedi Code is a rather bizarre one because it's written in an incomplete manner. So I'll read it out for you guys. There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. So the reason why I say that there's something missing, and I didn't detect this myself, so I can't take any kind of credit, but another YouTube channel pointed out that it's missing exactly the same word at the beginning of each sentence, and that word is when. So that we would then read,
True.
when there is no emotion, there is peace.
There's peace.
When there is no ignorance, there is knowledge. When there is no passion, there is serenity. When there is no chaos, there is harmony. And when there is no death, there is the Force.
I hadn't noticed that before.
So, alone, the Jedi Code doesn't make a lot of sense, and a lot of people have misconstrued what is trying to be said there, because it's almost like they're saying that there is no emotion within the Jedi Order, and that's not entirely true.
No.
And that there is no passion at all, because passion doesn't necessarily, it's not black and white, it's not just for the Sith, and that means that you're following dark desires, because you can also be passionate for a village, which would then drive you to want to save it, and to spare innocent lives and things like that. Passion comes in different
Variants.
different variants, different varieties. So I don't know what your thoughts are on the, I mean, none of these are ideal ways of living, but as a code itself, what are your thoughts with that extra word added in?
With the word added in, it makes more sense. It's more complete. However, I don't personally agree with it. Because there is no ignorance. When there is no ignorance, there is knowledge. I don't think it works. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, the one that stands out for me, and funny enough, it's the one that you just said. When there is no ignorance, there is knowledge.
People try to find knowledge, but do not find it.
Exactly, and some people say that ignorance is bliss, and in certain circumstances it can be. Like, for example, when Obi-Wan, I know it advanced the story, so it had to happen, but when Obi-Wan found out about who was killing the younglings and things like that, they gave him more pain. It was still knowledge that he'd found, but it didn't necessarily mean that he was any more of a person. He probably felt like he was being cut in half.
Says, you were my brother, Anakin.
Exactly, so you can't constantly argue that knowledge is a good thing to have, because sometimes knowledge can be really upsetting, and it can't always be a drive, otherwise you end up like that woman in the last Indiana Jones film. So next we're going to move on to the Sith code, and that is: peace is a lie, there is only passion. Through passion I gain strength. Through strength I gain power. Through power I gain victory. Through victory my chains are broken. The Force shall set me free. I don't know whether you noticed, but I stopped looking at the screen because I actually know it off my heart. So,
yeah, I did notice.
So yeah, but so what are your thoughts on that one? They are polar opposites.
I think the Sith code is probably more pragmatic, and that people being humans are rubbish. So peace is a lie.
Yeah, it's more of a. It's how I imagine if Rick lived in the Star Wars universe from Rick and Morty. This is the kind of code that he would live by, because he is very frank about things, and it is true. Peace, utterly, to be in peace is a complete lie unless you are dead.
True.
There's always going to be something.
Kill everyone off.
There's always going to be something that's not quite right. You can live in a state of bliss, of course, but you can't live like that forever, and you're always going to have something that's on your mind. So it's more reasoning with people to give them a better idea of what life is like. And it is true, through passion people do get stronger, because if they find something that they're passionate for, someone that they're passionate for, and assuming that everything is fine there, then they do get stronger. And through strength you do gain power, because say if you're in, I don't know, like a team lead situation or something, if you are a strong person you will probably lead better than if you are troubled and you have these other things rolling around in your brain. Through power I gain victory, and that's just like a continuation on of what I was saying anyway, that you go out to complete something, you're a strong-minded person or strong physically, and you complete that task, you won in that particular pursuit. And then through victory my chains are broken. Now this is an interesting one, because it implies for me that the Sith, as they are before they learn this code and start to live by it, they are shackled.
They are prisoners.
But at the same time, I perceive it as being the final lesson for why you shouldn't follow the Jedi Code. Because while you follow the Jedi Code, the Sith would obviously perceive you being shackled, because you can't have material possessions, you can't love for the purpose of a romantic connection, you have to love in a kind of love everyone kind of way, unconditional for everyone. I think that's something that Anakin explains in episode 2. So they're saying that through abandoning the Jedi Order, or through not pursuing that, your chains that you would have been locked up in or already are have been broken, and you can finally pursue all of those things.
I'd agree.
Yeah. So any thoughts on that as a kind of way to live? I mean, I have actually lived that way for a number of years. So I'm not going to say that it's a perfect way to live, because it also gives you a very kind of black and white look on life, which I have suffered with as well, where you could say that if you pursue power to gain victory all the time, if you don't succeed, then that's going to be seen as failure, whereas the Jedi would probably perceive it as just being another lesson, even though there is the whole thing of do or do not, there is no try. But they probably just perceive the failing on that instance as just being you not doing it, as opposed to you having tried and failed. So I still believe that the Sith code is more towards how we actually live as human beings in today's society, because to immediately even suggest for a moment, even with the when on all the start of the sentences, to even suggest that emotion may not be the best idea, or that ignorance is not great, or that passion's not the way to go, or that the chaos that we face on a daily basis, not just personally but also as a society, is better if we don't have it, then that's kind of like saying that the way that we live is entirely incorrect. And
fine, cool.
And this might be another reason why the Jedi failed in the first place, because they weren't really ready to deal with the chaos that the Clone Wars brought and other wars, and they weren't ready to deal with the passion that they started to face when they were mingling with other worlds and things like that, and to not know everything made them feel powerless in their pursuits, and they had to deal with emotional things. I mean, Ahsoka went through various stages of emotion, and you could say that's not the Jedi way, but you can't outright deny that, because otherwise you become Mace Windu.
Pretty much.
But yeah, sorry, I dove into that way too much, but you get the gist that I at least feel that the Sith code at least is a better way of living. And it's not to say that I believe that child murder and genocide are the way to go.
Well,
but at the same time, in a galaxy that was run by the Jedi, it was the quickest way of establishing their new order. You had to cut the head off the Hydra, and I've always said this when depicting, almost justifying what the Sith did. You have to cut the head off the Hydra before it just grows more heads. Otherwise, you are dealing with multiple problems. If you cut it off at its source, i.e. the younglings, then you pretty much win a lot quicker.
Yeah, getting rid of all of the other Jedi, you pretty much establish your empire.
You do, and then you kill the very ideals that drove the Jedi, because there's no one to support them, because they are all dead. And it's something that Sidious understood, it's something that Anakin came to understand, it's something that Malgus understood when he did his storming of the Jedi Temple. He went in there with the intention of killing everybody. He wasn't just there for a leader or a Jedi Council even, he was there to get everybody. And he did, to a certain extent. So we're going to move on to the Grey Jedi Code before my eyes turn yellow. So there is no dark side, nor a light side. There is only the Force. I will do what I must to keep the balance. There is no good without evil, but evil must not be allowed to flourish. There is passion, yet peace. There is serenity, yet emotion. Chaos, yet order. I am the wielder of the flame, the protector of balance. I am the holder of the torch, lighting the way. I am the keeper of the flame, soldier of balance. I am the guardian of balance. I am a Grey Jedi. That's actually the first time I read that code, so I think I did it alright.
Yeah.
But it attempts to combine both the Jedi and the Sith's teachings and then merge them into one, which you probably picked up on.
Yep.
But something, and I've had a little bit of look into probably one of the most Shakespearean characters, and people have said on multiple occasions one of the most well-developed game characters of all time would be Traya from the Knights of the Old Republic game. Now, she said in one of her teachings that the Force is so heavily relied on by the Jedi and the Sith, and this is incorrect, because if you strip away the Force, which apparently they were able to do, then what are you? It's like taking away someone's sword or their gun if they are a marksman or a fencer. If they specialise in that, then they are significantly weakened. Yes, I'm sure that the Jedi had some form of training and the Sith had some form of training to deal with situations like that, but they would be still significantly lesser capable of their current situation than they would have been had that loss not taken place. So I don't know whether it's necessarily mentioned in this, but this is something that I want to mention in my teachings for my made-up character, is that yes, the Force exists and it binds all of nature together, but at the same time we must learn to live without it, because other creatures in nature do, and they learn to survive very harsh conditions. Animals, regular humanoids, any other alien species within the Star Wars universe, they learn to survive through different situations. So the Jedi and the Sith, who claim to be, or at least the Sith, claim to be the better of normal civilization, they should be able to do that. Because otherwise, if they lose that, then what are they? They're lesser than citizens. They are the hive rats of the Star Wars universe, because they will just be scrounging around in the dirt while they get trampled on by people who've been able to live roughly, perhaps, but successfully for many, many years. So what do you think about the Great Jedi Code?
Personally, I agree with what it says. I personally think I would be a grey Jedi.
Yeah, okay. Fair.
Just spoilers. Yeah, I'm all about balance, and as a person, I'm a passionate person. Yeah, I agree that there can be peace.
Yeah.
And serenity can exist with emotion.
Yeah.
Attached to it.
Definitely.
And chaos needs, well, order needs chaos. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, because how do you decree what is order without first of all having chaos? And you can say that there is order in chaos because, say, like the streets of Coruscant. Oh, sorry, I say streets. The sky roads of Coruscant. If from our perspective, just looking at it, it looks chaotic and insane. But I challenge you to find at least a moment in, well, obviously minus the speeder chase, within the Star Wars main films where you're just looking at someone in the Senate or whatever and you can see all the planes and stuff outside, where one of them crashes into the other one. It doesn't happen.
No.
Because there is order within that chaos. Everyone kind of understands what they're doing, but at the same time it's very fast paced and
ordered chaos.
Ordered chaos, yeah, exactly. So that's probably something that the Grey Jedi preaches. And that's why they are, well, for the most part, successful in their pursuits, because most of the Grey Jedi are formerly Jedi, and they understand what makes a person good, but then they can understand the difficult choices that need to be made sometimes. A prime example of a difficult choice in a film, and if you don't mind me quoting other films, would be The Imitation Game. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Benedict Cumberbatch. We need to watch it. But there's a point where, a spoiler alert, but you probably know this from history anyway, they break the German code. And they find out that there is a German U-boat en route to attack a boat full of citizens, but they don't do anything because if they do it, then they realise that the Germans will realise that they will have cracked Enigma, meaning that their code will have then been changed, and then the whole process would be made mute. So I believe the Grey Jedi would be able to make decisions like that for the greater good. But at the same time, they would understand what good is and what...
They would have a concept of what the light side is and also what the dark side is.
Yeah, and the reason why some pursue the dark side, because not all dark side pursuers are just plain evil. I mean, Treya, she fell to the dark side, as I understand it, for a little bit, and doesn't necessarily make her a blithering psychopath. It just means that we've got to understand that Star Wars is, and I keep on saying this and I keep on hating it when I say it, is for kids. So they've got to simplify it, and they've got to show us, oh, this is good and it's entirely good, and this is evil and it's entirely evil. There's no in between. Obviously we got a bit of it with the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, but with the core films they have to kind of spoon feed us, because the main audience they're going for are children at the moment. At the moment. We hope that we'll be seeing a darker, grittier and more fleshed out Star Wars universe, because it isn't all black and white, and there are in-betweens. There are people that can go out and slaughter a small village, but they're doing it because the city's about to be hit with, like, I don't know, like an acid bomb or something. So it's a kindness or something like that.
One of the people on my course said pretty much Star Wars, if you look at it from the Sith perspective, a boy from a farm just rises through the ranks and kills thousands of people.
Exactly.
So one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter.
And it's good you say that, actually, because it It was something that was raised in Rogue One, and then I think it was something that was raised in Star Wars Rebels as well. Oh, and also in the Clone Wars, where the Resistance fighters, from the perspective of the CIS and from the perspective of the Empire and from the perspective of the First Order, they are terrorists. They are extremists because they'll go around unordered and ununiformed, and they destroy things because it's part of what they believe to be the righteous path. Which is fair enough, because Star Wars is from the perspective of them, so you can fight for whatever side you believe in. I'm not saying that I believe entirely in the Sith regime, but I'm saying that many bad decisions were made on both parts. Anyway, so we've covered that a little bit, and I feel like once I learn a little bit more about Treya and I put some stuff on our Star Wars fan page, hopefully we'll be able to dive into her teachings a lot, because I believe that some of the stuff that I've heard about her... Oh, well, here's an interesting one before we move on. Treya, because she travels around with your playable character, and she witnesses a moment where you donate credits to a refugee, and she asks you why you did that, and you say, okay, it was a small gesture, but it means I made a difference. But it's like, okay, but from the opposite end of the perspective, you've robbed his hope that was just hope, and you've made his struggle lesser, therefore making him weaker. Because he'll just now expect that, and then people will expect that hope or that hope in that form will spread, because it'll be like, oh, there's someone helping us out, and it'll be like, okay, well, we don't need to fight as hard. Oh no, wait, plague has happened. Oh no, wait, we've not been so hard on our defences. Now half of us are dead. Why? Because we let our guard down. So, it's a very harsh way of looking at it. I'm not saying that you have to go through life denying people help, because that's
I will not give to charity.
It's absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, you've got to understand when it's a greater kindness to show someone the way that they can do themselves, because maybe Treya, she believed that they could get out of it themselves, and in doing that would make them really, really strong and a force to be reckoned with, rather than these people who just plead and beg, and in the end of the day could be slaughtered by God knows what.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's another thing to discuss another time. It makes me sound really cold, but there you have it. So, we're going to move on to the Star Wars questionnaire. And the first question, and I think, well, we've already kind of answered it, but you can say it again if you like. Would you be a Jedi or would you be a Sith?
Grey Jedi.
You would be a Grey Jedi. Fair enough, and you've pretty much already said why, so we can move on from that. What is your favourite world or planet? You can talk about expanding universe if you want. I know it's not something that you've dived into as much as I have, which is good. Don't do that. But at the same time, you know a little bit, so it's entirely up to you.
Alderaan or Naboo.
Nice. I mean, I don't know if you know that Alderaan has flying space whales, which is pretty awesome. Yeah.
Oh.
You see it in one of the Old Republic trailers, and then in the game you get to fly them as speeder mounts. But yeah, no, Alderaan and Naboo are the planets that are closest to our planet, because they don't necessarily follow the same tradition as most Star Wars planets do, where it's like, okay, sand. Okay, so the entire planet is sand. Okay, lava. The entire planet is lava. Okay, forest, moon of Endor. Entire moon is forest. They have, like Naboo, it has its vast open plains, and it has its wooded area and jungles and swamps, and it has cities and things like that. So it has a bit of everything, really, and so does Alderaan. Maybe a little bit less than Naboo, but Naboo's a really nice choice. And I'd say the climate probably a little bit higher than ours, but not unbearable. No. Okay. Perfect. Exactly. So this one's going to be a bit drawn out, and I'm sure that you know how this runs, but I will go through it.
The lightsaber?
Yeah, lightsaber type, colour, and combat style. So first of all, what kind of lightsaber would you have? Did you want me to run through them?
I already have my answer, but I really need you to run through them.
Okay, so we've got the regular lightsaber, so wielded by people like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin, Mace Windu, regular blade length, and regular hilt, so it's not elongated, it's just for a two-hand grip or a standard one-hand grip. And then you have the lightsaber pikes, so they would be wielded just like a pike with shorter blade on either end, and I think they were wielded mainly by that lady in the Old Republic trailer with Valen. Also, the Sentinels, the Jedi Sentinels in the Jedi Temple. And then you have the lightsaber staffs, so they would be wielded by Darth Maul. I believe I'm doing that in the right order. One of them's right. One of them's pike and one of them's staff. But you get the idea that the staff, well, one of them has almost like a Shoto blade at either end, whilst the other one's even shorter. So Darth Maul's was the one that almost had like a Shoto blade at either end, and then the other one's even shorter than that. And then you have the more abstract ones like the lightsaber whip, the lightsaber gauntlet, which no one's ever chosen, and God help me if someone does. And the lightsaber crossguard, as used by Kylo Ren, and then one of the Old Republic fighters on Malachor 5, I want to say, which is found by Ezra. I think that's... Oh, and of course the lightsaber Shoto.
Shoto.
Yeah, you go for the Shoto. And in which colour would you have?
Green.
Yeah? Okay, so very much a Master Yoda kind of green. So would you say that you... Because this is something that I like to revisit although it's no longer canon, because now if you're a youngling and you're in the Jedi Order, you go to Ilum or a planet that has a Kyber crystal temple or mine or whatever, and the crystal chooses you as opposed to you choosing a crystal that reflects your background and your preferred method of combat or your preferred studies. So it used to be blue for Jedi Knight, green for the one who studied the Force more, then yellow for the Jedi Sentinels, purple for the one who brings themselves closest to the dark side but doesn't get consumed by it, and then obviously you got red and things like that. So would you say that you'd be more of a Force user, or more of a kind of Qui-Gon Jinn, the credits will be fine kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah, fair play.
I'm definitely not physically inclined.
No, fair enough. I mean, you can still use the Force for combat, and Yoda certainly did. So combat style. So there are 7. Yep.
Oh.
So the first one is Shicho, and it's like basic fencing. So very, very standard. And famous users include Yoda and Kit Fisto. I don't know if you know much about Kit. He was the one that was in green skinned with the tentacles that gets cut down by Darth Sidious, one of the 3 Jedi that fall there.
Oh, right.
You can see him a bit during the Clone Wars. Did we not watch the episode with General Grievous's lair? Did we not? Did we not get to that? Okay, fair. No? Fair play. So we got Makashi, which is a more dual-focused one, and it's focused around timing and accuracy, and it's very elegant as well. And famous users include Count Dooku. So if you remember how he fought against Anakin or Obi-Wan, or even Yoda, it was very kind of mocking in his... It didn't look like he used much energy. He was very fluent in his motion. Almost like a waterbender from Avatar. So you've got that one, and then you've also got Sarisu, which is more of a defensive one, and it integrates subtle dodges and uses very little energy or blade movement. So famous users would include Obi-Wan and Darth Bane. I know you don't know much about Bane, but Obi-Wan, a great example of when he used this would be against General Grievous in Episode 3, because he wanted to obviously keep his limbs attached. So he would have kept, like a shield, would have kept his lightsaber close to him as opposed to just out and about. So next you've got Ataru, which is an aggressive combat style and relies on the Force. So you integrate wide powerful swings and acrobatics as well. And famous users include Ahsoka Tano and Yoda. So that might be an alright one for you, because it relies on the Force a lot. So even if you may not be able to stand up on top of my bed right now and do a backflip, don't worry, I don't think anyone on this show that has actually come on would be able to do that, although Matt will definitely try.
It'll give it a good go.
You can use the Force to then do that. So the 5th one is a 2-parter, and it is made up of Degenso and Shien. Shien is a more defensive one than Sarisu, and also integrates launching powerful attacks after defense against blaster fire. And Degenso is more lightsaber dueling, powerful counter attacks, and solely focused on a defensive strategy.
Come on.
Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
Did you want me to go through the others, or are you alright?
I think I'm alright.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. No, fair enough. I think the one I chose was the 2-parter for Form 7, but I only chose Vapad. yeah, there we go. Vapad for that, which is channeling out your inner darkness, which is of course something that Mace Windu did, and using that in a combat situation, but not necessarily getting consumed by it, which is also something I feel like I'd really struggle in trying to perfect. But I think once I did, it would be flinging awesome.
I want to focus on defensive.
Yeah,
stuff,
no,
I think.
fair play. So moving on from that, and you'll be probably quite glad to move away from that bit. So favourite species within the Star Wars universe? You're absolutely fine to say human. I mean, they are the prominent species within the Star Wars universe. But I think it was really bizarre. When I did mine, I chose pure blood Sith, which, what do they kind of look like? They kind of, oh, do you remember Torchwood?
Yeah.
And do you remember that weird fish person that Jack caught?
Yeah.
They kind of look like that. So that's what the pure blood Sith looked like when they used to live on Korriban. And then, you probably sort of remember them from the Old Republic trailer, that one that was fighting with Malgus on the space station and got like his mask slashed in half. And then you've got, I chose the Ewoks as well. Don't know what possessed me to do that. That was really weird. Or maybe it was because of the drop-kicking Ewok achievement that you can get on the Force Unleashed 2. Which I never did, but I always like watching Let's Plays for. So I have no idea. But yeah, for you, favourite species?
Wookiee.
Yeah, oh, wow, very nice. Fair. Who else chose Wookiee? Who else chose Wookiee? I think it was Bob chose Wookiee. But yeah, no, fair enough.
Did have good Wookiee.
No, fair play. I mean, the Wookiees, I mean, I will never play The Force Unleashed, ever, just because you play as Vader killing Wookiees. So let's never play that game, or at least let's play after the first mission. But yeah, no, the Wookiees are a very honourable species. Obviously, they took heavy losses during the execution of Order 66, because for whatever reason the clones just mowed them down too. Obviously, not all of them died, because there were Wookiees that then life got even worse because they went to the Kessel mining facility, and they were used to build the Death Star and just various slave outposts and stuff. When we get to Rebels, you'll love it, because I think that there's a group of Wookiees that get saved, and we'll both cry because it's quite emotional. So if you were a Jedi, which master would you have? And you can also integrate Old Republic as well. I can't remember who I chose. I think I chose Qui-Gon Obi.
I go Yoda.
Yeah? No,
I'm a lot
fair
better at listening than Luke ever was.
For 900 years have I trained Jedi. So he would definitely be the most experienced out of most of the characters that we've encountered, both Legends and not. So no, fine choice. And if you were a Sith, which master would you have? And it's always a difficult one to choose, because the Sith run off of at least with the rule of two, they run off of the idea that there is one master to have the power and then there's an apprentice to crave it. So at one point you will need to kill your master. Or be killed by them.
Plagueis. Plagueis.
Plagueis.
Plagueis, whatever.
Fair play, no. So Plagueis, as the novel goes, was killed in his sleep, and it's also something that Sidious mentions in the opera scene. And he heavily studied the manipulation of midichlorians, because he believed that if he could control them, then he could control Earth itself. And it's something that, I think it's in the book, Sidious, after he kills his master, he believes that he may have succeeded, and he's almost scared of the corpse, because he thinks, what if he did succeed? What if me killing him or striking a mortal blow does nothing? So yeah, I mean, it was definitely a force to be reckoned with, but at the same time, I don't know whether he tortured Sidious in the same way that Dooku tortured Savage, or I don't know. I really don't know. I never finished that book. I will at some point. But yeah, no, it's an interesting one to pursue, because you'd be going into more of the sciencey side behind the Force, as opposed to just studying it as a religion, which I suppose then gives you a greater understanding and then maybe even a greater control of it. And then, bizarrely, again, the Jedi have no equivalent for this question, but if you were a Sith, what name would you have? It's always a difficult one. I think we've only ever had 2 or 3 people actually answer it. And the only reason I answered it was because I had it prepped. I mean, lots of people take their surnames and morph that a bit.
Because I'd have to manipulate Restrick.
But you could even combine it with Ellena. Darth Restner?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously something that we can work on. It's a very kind of spare of the moment thing, but I don't know why, but I imagine you as kind of being almost like a priestess Sith. Very knowledgeable, almost like you kind of combine the teachings of both Traya and Obi-Wan, because Traya loses her sight and she's like, yeah, I could restore it, but why would I? I'm just as strong without it. So it's almost like you would have these teachings. Say if you're in a battle and you were unfortunately injured, you wouldn't bother healing yourself because you're just as powerful with that injury as you are without. And it's a lesson that you would give to all of your students. So that's fair.
Yeah.
And then, again, I always say this should definitely be one of the first questions. What is your favourite Star Wars film?
It's between Rogue One and Empire.
Yes. Fair play. Good choices.
Thank you.
The right choices.
The right ones, okay.
No, fair enough. I mean, Rogue One for me was made perfection with that last scene. And lots of people say that they don't like the first and second act, but I personally don't mind them because every single film needs a build up to
action
and stuff. So you can't just have a film with action because it isn't a cinematic for a game. You have to have some development, otherwise it just makes the action kind of pointless and you don't know why there are stakes. So that film really kind of has some stakes.
It has the inciting incident.
Yeah.
Creative and professional writing student. You have to have that inciting incident to reach the climax and then back down.
Yeah. And it's something that Rogue One does rather well. Something, unfortunately, that not all of the Star Wars films actually do. And then at the opposite end of the scale, what is your least favourite Star Wars film?
Phantom Menace.
Yeah? Fair play. Definitely not always an answer that we get, because lots of people say Attack of the Clones.
I didn't mind Attack of the Clones.
I didn't. It's very long. Like, you really start to feel the drag around about the time when Obi's going to Kamino and Anakin's on Naboo. But at the same time, again, it's just building up, and then you can see from what parts of the relationship aren't poisonous with Anakin and Padme, which to be fair is very little. You can see where it all came from. So you can see them building a bit of a bond, and you can see them spending time together, and you can see that kind of professionality fluxing and then almost disappearing because they're spending so much time together. And to quote Rick, not that I necessarily believe it, but love is just familiarity over time. And it's kind of, Anakin always loved Padme, probably from the moment that he saw her on Tatooine, but Padme had to get that familiarity with him because all she had was just a bizarre boy that cut down a tree or whatever and made her a necklace and then didn't stop smiling at her awfully for a good few days. So it was the familiarity with Anakin's in quotes good side that probably got her to love him, as opposed to not necessarily despising him but giving him a wide berth. So and I love the way that this is right, because I should really say as you are a writer as opposed to if a writer. As you are a writer, what story would you tell? Just you.
Oh, pressure. I'd probably go down the route of what we're doing currently. Yeah.
So some Old Republic stuff, looking at the basic citizens in Imperial society on one of the Empire's homeworlds, and looking into how the dark side psychologically corrupts someone. Because again, I don't know if it's something that you would love to see more in Star Wars, but it's certainly something that I'd love to see, is a more psychological side of it. Because again, it isn't all black and white. You can't say that you're just And it's something admittedly we are getting a bit of with Kylo Ren and a bit of with Rey, because you're seeing the conflict that she's going through and you're physically seeing it because of the visions that she's having. But even then you're not seeing what it's actually doing to them.
No.
On a mental scale and how they perceive the world. So it would be better to, and that's something that I really hope we get with the Obi-Wan Kenobi film, where you see him on Tatooine and you see his kind of connection with the Force fluctuating between his sadness and his anger.
Because Kylo just throws tantrums.
He does, and he's a very kind of one-dimensional character, the same as Rey, where she's just kind of like, oh, I have to do this now, and I have to do this. Whereas Obi-Wan, he's just like, we can do this. But if we don't do this, it's not the end of the world. And he'd probably take the same kind of approach on Tatooine, because he can't make too many final decisions, otherwise he'll blow his cover. So he has to be rather careful about it. And he has to choose probably a lesser two evils at one point. Who knows? We'll see what happens later on in the future. Which film has your favourite soundtrack or piece of music? And what would be that piece of music?
Bloody hell.
I know, it's quite a question. Tom, I always bring it back to Tom. He chose a really, really interesting one, and it's the piece of music where Kylo Ren's talking to the Mask of Vader in Episode 7. And it's kind of that long and more kind of echoey Imperial March. Although a short piece of music, it's very kind of atmospheric. And I remember when I saw, because I knew exactly what we were going to see, but you didn't see the Mask of Vader until he stood up and walked away. You get the kind of tingle. It's like, oh, that's the Mask of Vader. It doesn't matter that Vader's not alive. That still carries some purpose. That still carries some presence about it. The galaxy probably still lives in fear of that face alone. So I can understand that.
Probably. Why can I not remember it? But the soundtrack during Rogue One when Vader's "You Belong on the Ceiling."
Oh yes, that is a very nice one. I often listen to that on the way to work, and probably with a really scary expression on my face as well. I often do it when there's a queue on the bus, and it's like, I really wish I could do this.
Fair enough.
So yeah, no, that is a very nice soundtrack, and it really does pay tribute to Vader's battering ram style of combat that those rebel troopers stood zero chance, and if they were Jedi, they probably would have been in an equal amount of trouble. Because it doesn't matter. And I love the fact that they kept Vader's fighting style from Empire when he's going up against Luke, and it is just hacking and slashing away towards the end. Because he is, at the end of the day, he's a powerhouse, and he is a force to be reckoned with, and that piece of music really kind of got that. I'm going to see if I can find it very, very quickly, but I'm also going to ask you your next question, and I think I know the answer to it. And the question is, do you collect figurines? No. Would you ever be interested in collecting figurines at any point?
I would.
Yeah.
It's just I haven't yet because I've got into it so recently.
No, fair play. I mean, so I don't know whether I've told you, but something that I do, which is rather bizarre, is I always collect figures that have been in the films for the least amount of time. And my favourite one that I still need to get is from the remastered version of Star Wars Episode 4, when you get all the different shots of Tatooine. There's a droid that is picking up like a bit of metal or whatever, and a little fly droid comes over to it and buzzes at it, and then he punches out of the sky. It's like, what was that, like a 3-second shot, but there's a figure of it. So that piece of music is they're all in the wrong order, that's annoying. Oh, that's really irritating. Why? I generally don't know. Oh, it's actually He's Here For Us, I think. Oh no, wait, no, that's Krennic. Damn.
Father would be proud? No.
No. And it's neither of those. I think it's Hope. Because then Princess Leia, that's the only line that she gets, is Hope. Yeah, so I think that is the one. But anyway, so moving on. In your opinion, what is the best thing about the expanded universe? So I know it's something that you haven't dived into much, but from what you have seen.
It gives people who weren't involved in the creative process of writing scripts for Star Wars a chance to get what they want to say out there.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a way for people, and you get this with comics for various things like DC, Marvel. Although I should be a bit less vague with that because Marvel do Star Wars comics now. But with things like the Superman series, or things like The Flash, or things like Captain America, you get to explore these characters more if you want to. The EU is something currently, it isn't something that you need to explore. I think it would be nice if people were encouraged to. So say if there was a film that threw in a quote from something that happened in the expanded universe and you're like, oh, okay, I have no idea what that is, maybe I'll go out and check it out, but I don't need to know about it in order to enjoy this film. So yeah, it's a constant expanding thing, although it's trying to get back to its original place, which, God help me, that's going to be a couple of years yet, because that original expanded universe was huge. And it's been significantly reduced now, but it's growing again, so let's hope that we get some cool stories from that. And at the opposite end of the scale, what is the worst thing about the EU for you?
This would probably be just a general thing, that if you write based on someone else's property, then essentially you are stealing from them. Yeah. Don't know if I can think of 4. Stealing. Obviously, it isn't in line with the original vision for Star Wars.
No.
It's people throwing in what they want.
But it was something that I think George Lucas was quite excited about. I'd like to think that he was, and it's something that I'd love to see myself doing, is creating a universe or creating an idea and then other people adding to the pot. So long as it's not like someone going out and saying, okay, between the events of episode 4 and 5, Luke Skywalker dies, because then that may cause some problems. And it was bad enough when the Clone Wars did a fake out like that, but I'll show you that at a later date. I cried, but even though I knew it didn't happen, I was like, but they're really going with this. There's a funeral and everything. Stop it. So yeah, there is obviously an issue about certain ideas changing and things like that. But at the same time, I feel like Lucas wanted people to take creative choices. You are limited by the things that you can do, minus myself, because I've decided that my character will create a secondary universe where I can just run wild. But that's a different story for a different time. So yeah, you are kind of limited, but at the same time, that's nice. There are guidelines to follow, but that doesn't mean that you are completely limited in what you can do. So there are good and bad things about the EU. And last of all, what does Star Wars mean to you? So obviously, like you mentioned, you haven't been in the fandom for all that long.
Been in the fandom for about 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
Maybe. Because
the first time I met you, I showed you Rogue One, didn't I? So.
Yeah, so rather cheesily. I associate Star Wars with you.
Aww.
And your passion about Star Wars was what first attracted me to you.
Oh, brilliant. I didn't actually know that.
Yeah.
Aww.
So yeah,
because usually it repels people, so that's nice.
No. No.
Ah, that's nice. But yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Well, so we'll wrap up here because as we always do, we've overran by about 15 minutes, but that's fine. It was worth it all for that last couple of lines. So, thank you very much for joining us. This has been your first kind of like one-on-one episode, hasn't it? Because usually you're with Harrison and I. Yeah. So welcome, and I hope you've enjoyed.
I have.
Here's the more episodes, just you and I, or maybe even I'll do an episode where even I'm not on it. Who knows?
Oh.
Who will lead? Who will?
Oh.
Who knows? But whether you are Jedi or Sith, Rebellion or Empire, First Order or Resistance, CIS or Galactic Republic or Bulgalit. Yeah, Harrison, I said it.
Bulgalit.
We hope you have a very good day, evening or night or afternoon, whatever you guys are doing. May the Force be with you, and we'll see you guys next week.